Tuesday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be back for another day. Hope you guys are all having a great day out there today. Tremendous show coming up. A lot of variety today just because of all the stuff going on. Plenty of Vikings in the middle of the show. Andrew Krammer joins me here in a little bit to review the film from the Vikings' 31-29 win over the Packers. The Vikings are 4-0. A tale of two halves, kind of. A tale of turnovers, a tale of big-time throws by Sam Darnold, a tale of overcoming some of their own obstacles to pull out that win, to hold on for that win. So Andrew and I will get into the film in just a little bit, including my hot takeaways from the game. Pretty spicy this week, I'd say. My friend Keith Rashad joins me in a little bit, too, for Vikings Poetry. 4 poems today, 4 wins for the Vikings, only fitting in that regard. I have a Pete Rose thought at the end of the show. Baseball legend passed away at the age of 83, a complicated legacy, to be sure. Talked to him, I think like 7 or 8 years ago, wanted to share some of that kind of memory of talking to him and kind of what we talked about and what I took away from that as part of his legacy. So I'll get to that at the end of the show. First, though, what did I miss? Timberwolves had media day on Monday. Awkward, kind of. It could have been more awkward if they would have ordered players not to talk about the still not officially completed Karl-Anthony Towns trade for Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, Keita Bates-Diop, and a first-round pick. Chris Finch and Tim Connolly said they couldn't talk about it. They are official, kind of high-ranking members of the organization, but players were free to talk about it at the very least, so we got to hear their perspectives on it. I think Anthony Edwards was interesting talking about it, just, saying Cat was his brother, saying it's going to be a while to process it, like Rudy Gobert said, things like that. My biggest takeaway, though, was sort of the veteran, calm approach that point guard Mike Conley Jr. took to the trade in terms of how he talked about it, how he's thinking about it. This is part of why I love Mike Conley Jr. Like, he's been a great player for this team for the year and a half he's been here. Calming influence, but a guy that can still play. Really glad for his sake and the Wolves' sake that he is still here on this roster. Not just a mentor, a guy who can still play. Just a tremendous kind of late career addition to the Wolves. But how he is framing this trade is a great way to kind of frame this trade. Here was a quote from Chris Hines' story. Said, "Obviously, Cat, what he means to the city, to our team, he's a very special individual. Him and his family, it hurts, but you understand why. You understand the reasoning," talking about the trade. "You understand what we're getting back with Julius and Dante and what they bring to the table. So you have to balance those emotions. Ultimately, the cards you're dealt, you go forward with it, and we're very positive in what we're going to be able to do." Talking about DiVincenzo being a guy who helped the Warriors a couple of years ago win a championship. Talking about how he compared him to Drew Holiday and how he can impact a team's winning chances. Talking about how they still think they're going to be, still be a championship contending team. Rudy Gobert talking about Julius Randle. He's a competitor. He works really hard and he's a little bit of a bully. He likes to attack you, hit you in your chest. I think the Wolves got a lot back in this trade. Even if I was all in on Cat, which I obviously have not been over the years, I've been kind of on this, not on this crusade to trade Cat, but I've been on the side of, hey, you got to trade this guy when his value's high. You got to trade him, A, to get out from underneath his salary, but B, because you still just don't trust what you're going to get from him. Even if I was all in on Cat, I would look at this objectively and say, hey, they still got quite a bit back. In addition to the flexibility salary-wise down the road and not being locked into the second apron for years and years and years, where they would be severely limited in the additional pieces they could add around Anthony Edwards and company. Even if I was all in on him, I would have to say, yeah, they got back a lot, but I wasn't. So you look at this trade on balance and you say, Cat gave a lot to this city. He gave a lot to this organization. He was loyal. He was paid very well to be loyal, but he was certainly loyal. He was here for a lot of bad years, was here for some good years too. You know, you had the Jimmy Butler getting better year. That all fell apart, but then it started building again. I mean, let's not forget, Cat's been in the playoffs now here for 3 years in a row. He's been in the playoffs 4 times in his career with the Wolves. He's a lot of guys had it a lot worse in a Wolves uniform. So I think he was loyal. He did a good thing for this franchise. He had a good year last year, rebuilt himself after the injury he had 2 years ago. I think it was kind of the perfect time for him to get a new start, be in New York, maybe kind of be back to his natural position, and for the Wolves to kind of make a shift here, to make a clean break, to have Anthony Edwards as your clear number one, to have supporting cast galore around him, to see what Randall can do this year, to see if that's a guy you want long-term or if that's the payroll flexibility you want going forward, to have DiVincenzo for 3 years on a really cost-friendly deal, to have a first-round pick to dangle in a trade, things like that. They got a lot back. I think this is a good move. I think Mike Conley Jr. laid it out perfectly, and it could have been a much more awkward media day if they wouldn't have let players say things like that. Before we get to Vikings talk, quick note, Big Ten admitting that the offsides call on the Gophers' onside kick the other day was not the correct call. That doesn't make it any better. It doesn't help that, remember when the NFL changed their overtime rules after the Vikings lost to the Saints in overtime of the playoffs in 2009 because the Saints got won the coin flip, got the ball, went down, kicked a field goal, game over. That didn't change the outcome of the game. That didn't make you feel any better. It did change how things went going forward. Same thing with the Gophers. PJ Fleck saying on Monday that he had a conversation with the Big Ten coordinator of officials, and the coordinator of officials said the play was too tight to flag, basically saying they had messed up. They are now changing their process. They're changing the process of how they officiate onside kicks because the Gophers did come away with that kick, should have had the ball at Michigan's 38-yard line with a chance to tie or win. All the momentum in the world after coming back from a huge deficit. They were down just 3 with 1:37 to play. Play gets called back. They try again. No dice. So now the Big Ten is going to put multiple officials in the best position to consistently make the correct judgment. So they're going to position a headline judge and a line judge at the 35 of the kicking team to make sure they get 2 looks at where the ball is and where the player is when the ball is kicked. So interesting subplot. Doesn't change this for the Gophers. Maybe makes it worse in that they're saying, yeah, we probably shouldn't have called that flag, and we're going to immediately change how we officiate that play. Because you can't imagine this is ever going to come up in this exact scenario to the Gophers' benefit, but at least they are trying to get it right after messing up on Saturday big time.
Let's review the film with Andrew Krammer, a bleary-eyed Andrew Krammer back from Green Bay. It's a drive, which is nice because it means we can send more people. It's not so nice because it means you have a pretty long Sunday bleeding into Monday.
That's true. Yeah, it's a long drive back, but hey, at least it was a noon game, so I like that.
A noon game in September where you're not going to be worried about ice and snow and stuff like that in a December game. So at least you got that going for you.
Exactly, and hey, there was a lot less slipping by the Vikings this time around too. Maybe that helped contribute to the win.
The right cleats. Before we get to the film, my 3 hot takeaways, Andrew. Number 1, Sam Darnold is an MVP candidate right now.
Hey, leads the NFL in touchdown passes with 11. I saw he's 3rd in ESPN's QBR, which is kind of a better passer rating metric.
Yep.
Why not at this point? 4-0. Somebody with
4-0 team in the NFC.
Exactly. And the Seahawks have a chance tonight, but somebody at within the Vikings organization going into this week was very tepid about their predictions when we were just talking about expectations and the team. And this team employee said, hey, if we beat Green Bay, all systems go. Put the pedal to the metal on expectations. And so why not? I don't think that's too spicy. I think that's a good take for you because honestly, like Darnold is playing so well at this point. He threw 6 red zone touchdown passes in these last 2 games, or it might even be 7. He has O'Connell has kind of put the team on his shoulders a little bit and said, hey, If it's late in the game, we're going to trust you to throw the ball to win this for us. If we're in the red zone, goal line, we can't run. We're going to trust you to throw it in. And you're seeing that kind of empowerment. And O'Connell wants to say that, the cart wasn't put before the horse here. He's saying, I always had this confidence in him. This is why we're at this point. But honestly, you're seeing just how differently O'Connell is calling games in week 4 compared to week 1 when they played their first game together.
Absolutely. We'll get into that, I think, more a little bit as we look at the film. But yeah, just the numbers, when you're, again, an undefeated team, 4 games into the season, when you have 3 more touchdown passes than anybody else in the NFL, when you're 3rd in the total QBR metric, like it just automatically puts you in that conversation right now. Like, certainly, like we've talked about, comeback player of the year is within his reach if he keeps playing like this. And again, usually that goes to a player who is injured. You don't necessarily love to be a comeback player of the year when you're only coming back from your own precipitous drop off from expectations. But the talent has obviously been there, and it's coming out right now.
Yeah, and you're seeing it with just the athleticism, the arm talent. That throw to Justin Jefferson for the touchdown, just right over the shoulder of Kayshawn Nixon, the Packers corner. And Darnold said, yeah, I'm just putting it up for Jefferson. But the anticipation, the touch to drop it in there, it literally right over the shoulder pad of the Packers defender. It's just an incredible throw. You're right. You're seeing why he was taken 3rd overall. And it's such a cliche that we heard all summer of like, well, we can, we see the talent. This is why he was taken 3rd overall. But no, this is what a franchise envisioned. This is what the Jets envisioned when they took him. And of course, they're not the ones to get it out of him.
Hot takeaway number 2, forget what this organization usually does. They should be working on and completing a KOC extension midseason.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, they probably wouldn't I don't even know if I'm sure O'Connell would welcome an extension at any point, but if that drew any kind of attention of his away from the team, I'm sure he wouldn't want to even send that message. Maybe it would be bad PR in O'Connell's mind to make this season or this point about him in any way, shape, or form. I think that's kind of antithetical to how O'Connell wants to do things. So I think it might be O'Connell who says, hey, let's just wait. It's great. Let's table that offer. Let's keep it. Let's even maybe increase it. If we continue to do well this season. So I see what you're saying. He's more than deserved it. And honestly, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah at this point, the moves he's made, especially this year's free agency, Grenard, Van Ginkel, Cashman, these guys are making such big impacts so far that both of those guys probably want to wait to see how the season plays out because their stock continues to rise.
It's true. I just feel like if there was slight conversations before the season started, like kind of make or break year for O'Connell, make or break year for Kwesi, and some of that came before the McCarthy injury, which maybe changed some of the calculus on it. But if that was some of the chatter in early August, that's 180 degrees from there right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot of tepid kind of, feelings this summer about how it would be because it was such a huge transition year with all the new defenders that we mentioned, with Sam Darnold taking over for Kirk. But boy, it's gone about as well as anybody could have expected.
Third hot takeaway, a little bit of cold water here. I want to say I'm worried that Aaron Rodgers is going to carve them up in London with some of the intermediate stuff that Love found in the second half of that game.
That was interesting. Green Bay, and when you look back at that game, the Packers obviously struggled in the first half. You don't go down 28-0 without offensive issues. But in the second half, especially the fourth quarter, there's something Byron Murphy, the Vikings defensive back, said that stood out to me about that. He said, Love was checking more at that point. He seemed like he understood more of what we were in defensively. He said, he might not have known exactly, but he thought he knew, and he seemed more decisive. He was getting the ball out faster. He seemed more comfortable. And I think there is some of that to this Flores defense where it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. Not to say that these guys aren't all great and physically talented and dominating individual matchups at times, but how they win is a lot of subterfuge before the snap. It is the late rotations on defense. It is all those things. So if you're a smart enough quarterback, and especially if you get a beat on it, and Rodgers, more than Love, more than Stroud, more than Purdy, and more than Daniel Jones, has seen way more football than any of these guys they've faced so far, and I don't know how much you can confuse him. Now, the Vikings, though, can pressure. They can win up front. Patrick Jones has 5 sacks already somehow, and he's been dominating his individual matchups. You've got Van Ginkel. Obviously, Grenard played well in that game on Sunday. And then they blitz incredibly well. If they get Ivan Pace back for this game, Ivan Pace is one of the best blitzers on the team. So I think that's the way they win. That's the way they probably try to get after Rodgers, make him move as a 41-year-old quarterback in the NFL. But we haven't seen enough from the Jets, so that's why I think this is a little bit too spicy for me. We haven't seen a lot. What have we seen from the Jets, Mike, for you to be like, you know what, that this is going to be it? The only thing I think of is nobody had really done much against them. You have Daniel Jones struggling in week 1, not surprising. Although he's been a little bit better the rest of the season. We got Brock Purdy saying your scheme is crazy. They shut them down. They completely baffle CJ Stroud. But this is film where a team might look at it and say, okay, I know how to beat this now, even with all your good players. And now you've got a veteran quarterback, your first real veteran quarterback, who's going to come in and say, okay, I've seen everything. If I don't get greedy like Jordan Love got on some of those bad plays, those negative plays that he had, I think the Jets could play pretty clean football and put some points on the board. That is the thing. Aaron Rodgers does not turn the ball over. That's the hallmark, right, for that guy. So if they can actually have face an opponent that controls the football in that way, because the Vikings swung that game with their takeaways, with the 4 takeaways they had, including the 2 at the end. And you're right, Jordan Love just throwing up a prayer when Harrison Smith is blitzing off the edge untouched. He's just like, I got to get rid of it. Just chuck it up. And Byron Murphy seemed like the intended target on that interception. You're absolutely right. I don't think Rodgers is the kind of guy to do that. The issue is that they can't run the ball either, the Jets. I think Breece Hall didn't do a whole lot this past week. So it would have to be the Aaron Rodgers show at Tottenham Stadium, for that to happen. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll check that out on next Sunday. Nice early start for the folks here, 8:30 a.m. For local time. So we'll get your breakfast ready. You have the rest of your day to do everything else. You'll be done with Vikings by 11:30 or noon. Noon if it's as long as this last game. And that game against the Packers was long. It was like 3.5. It was like 3:30 by the time that thing got over. It was. All the reviews. Kevin O'Connell won 3 challenges. You had Matt LaFleur arguing with the refs and getting flagged just before halftime. Right. You had all the penalties too, I believe, in the first half. That was it was a really long and weird game. Just an incredibly weird game. Let's get to some of the film. Like I said, 2 things that stood out that you kind of looked back at. One, some stuff with Darnold and just the trust they're putting in him in key spots. Absolutely, yeah. And when you watch back and see some of the calls that they made, and just in real time watching it, I'm sure fans sitting at home on TV, but you see that they get the ball back up 28-22. The Packers had rattled off 22 unanswered points at this section of the fourth quarter. You're on your heels, and Sam Darnold had just gotten sacked by an unblocked blitzer, a slot corner blitz that he didn't see coming from the backside. 2 plays later, that's when the Packers scored and then got the 2-point conversion to pull within 6. At that point, you're on your heels, and Kevin O'Connell sends out a play to Sam Darnold that is basically it's a pass that if they didn't get the right coverage would possibly check into a run. And so they're leading with a pass there. They wanted the pass, and that ended up being a 17-yarder to Justin Jefferson on a perfect ball on a crossing route to move the chains. And then it was a pass after that on a little Josh Oliver screen. And then it was another pass to Justin Jefferson. I mean, that is the kind of empowerment when you had, I think it was 7 minutes left in the game. You're up by 6. You could try to bleed clock. A conservative coach with a turnover-prone quarterback who had just turned the ball over could probably do that. Yeah. And O'Connell talked about this after the game. He said, I'm always going to play try to be smart, but always play the aggressive play and not worry about any potential outcomes and play scared or coach scared. And credit to him because he's doing it. This is not just coach speak. It's not him standing up there trying to bloviate and tell us something that's not actually happening. That's how he did it. And the Vikings end up driving down there. It stalls out with some failed passes that then turns into the field goal, 9-point lead. That is really the cushion that helped win that game for them. Yeah, 100%. that's the kind of stuff that, you're seeing you're seeing Darnold reward that confidence too by when you get into the red zone now. He had 4 red zone touchdown passes against the Texans. I believe he had 2 on Sunday against the Packers. They can't run in the red zone very well, Mike. They're still not a good short yardage run team. Right. They're not a very good power run team. So when you get up close, it's on Darnold in a way that it was kind of on Kirk before. And that's cool when it's Kirk and you've been with him for so many years and you have that confidence built up. But this dude's a month into his Vikings tenure and he's earning that confidence by just playing really well in those situations. So it's a great pairing between O'Connell and Darnold right now. And you could tell that it's really full-fledged confidence in both.
Yeah. And as much as Darnold, gave and took away in that game, I mean, the turnovers told the story of both how they got up so big, how they gave it back, but also how they preserved it in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you look at that game, how it started, the Vikings build the 28-0 lead through the takeaways. It was the first interception by Camus Grugier-Hill when Christian Watson just got bent into a million different directions and got hurt and carted off that field. That was one that I just didn't understand what Love was doing, but it was an incredible play at the linebacker spot by Grugier-Hill, who's a backup for the Vikings. You want to talk about depth? He's a backup. He jumps in there and he darts backwards down the seam like he was Derek Brooks for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and leaps in there and makes that interception. I mean, 2 plays later, Jordan Addison is running into the end zone on a 7-yard touchdown. That puts them up 21-0. And then later on in that first half, Jordan Love is under pressure and throws a pass that's a little high to Luke Musgrave, but Musgrave tips it up into the air for Shaq Griffin to come down with. The Vikings score a touchdown to go up 28-0 right after that. That game that lead completely was built on those takeaways from that defense. And then you go into the second half, and I'd mentioned the strip sack by Sam Darnold helps the Packers get back into it. It's Byron Murphy who gets 2 takeaways in the fourth quarter to help them seal it. It's like it's every different week, it's a different guy. It's Van Ginkel one week, it's Cashman the other week, it's Grenard against his former team. This week, it was guys like Byron Murphy who punches the ball out of Tucker Kraft's hands after intercepting Jordan Love earlier in the quarter on a weird pass that Love just lobbed up there because watching it back, I think it's because he had an unchecked blitzer. Brian Flores just went all out, sent Harrison Smith off the right tackle, and nobody was there to block him because there were so many rushers. And at that point, I think Love just needed to get rid of the ball. He saw a safety coming at him. He thought, there's no help over the top. Let's just lob this thing. Wicks was not ready for it, nor was he tracking it. Byron Murphy absolutely was. And it was a key play in that game, much like the second takeaway was in that quarter for them too. So when you look at the yardage, it was about even. And when you look at kind of how this game ended up playing out between the two halves, there wasn't too much difference in the two teams. What there was more takeaways for the Vikings and a kicker who didn't miss 2 kicks like they did for Green Bay.
Yeah, that was huge. Rookie kickers in this rivalry have had a hard time sometimes.
Sometimes, not if you're Will the Thrill Reichard.
No, he was fine. He hasn't missed a kick so far this year. I think Vikings fans who remember 1998 might want him to miss 1 before the season's over, but we'll see about that. Andrew, great stuff as always. We'll do this again next week, I believe. And have a great day.
Sounds good, Mike. You too. Thanks.
Great stuff from Andrew. Just a reminder, you can watch our 3 Hot Takeaways segment on YouTube every week. That comes out on Mondays on YouTube, so kind of a sneak preview of the podcast. Andrew and I on the Star Tribune's YouTube channel. Go check that out. Give it a rating, give it a like, things like that. Leave a comment. Would love that. But yeah, thanks to Andrew again for his insights into the game.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with Royal Credit Union's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
It's Vikings poetry time on Daily Delivery. I can think of no better way to bring you all the details of Sunday's 31-29 win over the Packers than with 4 poems from my good friend Keith Rashad. Four poems for the four wins, I guess. 4-0 this season. That's probably about as many as the most pessimistic Vikings fan might have thought they would have in the entire year.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that pretty much anybody did not expect this coming.
No.
And what's surprising to me is even in our group text chat, the level of vitriol and pain and anguish at this 4-0 start that some people are having is a little surprising to me.
It's just it's denial at this point. You're like, just I don't know, maybe you just want to be proven right later. Anyway, let's have the first one, please.
Like, just smile once, John.
Just smile. It's okay, John.
Just like anyway.
Enjoy it for how long. Enjoy it for however long it lasts. Yes, please.
A commanding lead, then so many twists and turns. Was Kirk the QB?
Yeah, it had a little feel to that. Although, here's the thing: just like they did against San Francisco, when the game was turning, remember that San Francisco game? Like, they were close to going up, like 27-7. Jones fumbles at the 1 yard line, and then all of a sudden the game changes. San Francisco goes on a big drive. It's 20-14. They need a drive. Darnold puts it together, gets them a field goal. Almost identical this game, where it's falling apart. They're only up 6 with like 10 minutes left. And then Darnold takes them on a field goal drive. Again, it's not like a game-clinching drive, but it's a drive you got to have in that moment. They trust him enough to throw the ball. So, yeah, it's falling apart, but it's still... I didn't have that doom and gloom feeling. I had the... but I still thought they were going to get it done. That's a different feeling.
It was kind of interesting because this is the game of the season that has felt like what other games in the past 6 or so years have felt like.
Yeah.
Right. And they're playing very good teams, or at least allegedly good teams. We'll see how it all shakes. Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out at the end. But this is the first one that it actually kind of felt like, maybe, just maybe, this is one of those games, one of those toss-up games in the Kirk Cousins era where they might actually blow it, And how many games did we watch with Cousins where they'd get out to some sort of lead and then it would just erode? And that's not to put full blame on Kirk. There was Ed Donatel for a while there too.
Yeah,
and
there was a head coach before that might have trusted his defense a little bit too much too.
Maybe just a little too much. Maybe wanted that side of the ball to shine just more than perhaps he should have. But so it was one of those games that reminded me of what it looked like in the past. But they still ended up winning, right? And they're 4-0, and they're playing this amazing football right now. So how do you not enjoy it?
How do you not enjoy it? I guess that's a question for our friend John. Yes. How about poem 2, please?
A breath of fresh air to watch the opposing team have kicking problems.
Man, right? Like, you don't want to say too much because it's only 4 games into the year, but Will Reichert, the rookie for the Vikings, has not missed a kick yet. I did notice the Packers kicker missed 2 field goals that were pretty important by the end of the day. Although
I do remember a year of my life where a kicker didn't miss any field goals until one.
Yeah, it's hard to remember that, but Reichert will miss one. Hopefully, for the Vikings' sake, it's like in a game where they're up, 27-3 already, and he mishits one, and then it's like, okay, he is human. You don't have to carry that weight into the NFC title game, stuff like that.
Well, and just like Jefferson dropped 2 passes last game, right, when it was more or less meaningless. So we'll see. It will happen. Allegedly, we'll see. And just hopefully it doesn't happen to be at the close to last play of the NFC Championship game for a team that should have won.
I wonder.
But anyway, the point is that it was fun to see the other team have these issues and be plagued by this. And say what you want about momentum and momentum doesn't exist or it does exist or whatever, but had the Packers gotten points on those 2 opportunities, it would have changed the complexion of the game. Who knows what the final score would have been, but it would have at least given them some momentum or not let it be 28-0 before they start
100%.
mounting a comeback.
Well, yeah, because the Packers were moving the ball pretty well. The Vikings came out and scored right away, but the Green Bay came right back, got it to like the 15, and the Vikings pushed them back a little bit. But that first field goal he doinked was only like a 37-yarder, maybe. That's like a gimme these days. He misses that. So all of a sudden the Vikings get the ball from there, go back down again. So instead of 7-3, it's 14-0. Those are huge moments in an early part of that game, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Poem 3.
Okay, fine, Vikings. I guess I'm going to purchase Super Bowl tickets.
Wow. Come on. Not yet. Where is it this year? Is it New Orleans?
Oh, who cares? Whatever. It doesn't matter. Look, I've been skeptical. Everybody's been skeptical.
Yeah.
Okay. About this team, and obviously this is maybe too bold of a declaration that they're going to go to the Super Bowl, but they've demonstrated, and we've seen it before. We've seen Vikings teams go 6-0 and miss the playoffs. We've seen them go 5-1 and ended up
5-0 and missed the playoffs in 2016. Yes.
Last year the Eagles were 7-0. Before they barely scraped it.
They made the playoffs, but yeah, right. Things can fall apart.
The collapse can happen.
Right.
We know that it's absolutely possible. But this team, I'm finally willing to accept that this is actually just a very good football team.
Yep.
Not a Case Keenum year, not the first year with O'Connell when it was 13-3 and felt 13-4. Felt like a little.
Yeah.
So, this is a very good football team. And I'm ready to embrace that. I'm willing to accept that. And I defy you to name me a team that is demonstrably better in the NFC right now.
No, I agree. I agree with that. I will take exception. I think 2017 was a really good team. They got some breaks that year, but they had the number one offense and number one defense in terms of like rushing, some sort of efficiency metrics. Keenum's performance.
Keenum would heave the ball as far as he could into the air blindly, and Diggs and Thielen would save him time and time and time again.
Yes, but
everybody knew. Even the coach. That's the one time I would say that Mike Zimmer, he was as much as he wanted to crap on his quarterbacks, he was kind of right there.
Yes, but that was still a good team. Like that was probably the peak of their defense. They had a lot of guys on offense, like Diggs, Thielen making plays. Like even if Case Keenum's year was fluky, he played at a high level thanks to those receivers. That was a much better team than the 2022 Vikings. Let's at least say that.
Without Keenum's luck, that would have gone down as the worst team in Vikings history. Okay.
Wow. I get what you're saying. I think 17 and 22 were different kinds of teams, but I do get what you're saying.
This feels more sustainable than I would have imagined at this point.
Yes, that's for sure. Last one, please.
All right. A lover's caress. Two souls merge into just one. What's this Tinder thing?
Gosh, what?
It's got nothing to do with football. I just could use a girlfriend.
Yeah, I know. We've been talking about making you a profile of some sorts. I know what it is. I don't know how to go about setting up a profile. It has something to do with swiping. But yeah, I'll help you with your profile if you need help. I think I can sell you better than you can sell yourself. How about that?
Well, we'll see. I'm still terrified of the apps.
Well, you're still terrified of a lot of things, including these Vikings, aren't you? Do you have hope now? Do you have hope?
Well, that's what the whole third poem was about,
that's what
right? That for at this point, finally, right? I'm willing to accept that this is a good team, and it's not just pure fluke. And again, it could fall apart. We've seen it happen before. They are one injury. Stephon Gilmore leaves. It goes down, and the defense is going to look a lot worse right away. But like I said, this isn't just Keenum throwing the ball up to and getting saved by Diggs and Thielen, right? This isn't just the Vikings winning every coin flip in one-score games.
Right.
This is a team that has a really good defense, that has really good weapons on offense, that's clicking, and that's going to get better once they get all of their weapons.
Sure.
So it's it's easy to see a path to greater success with this team.
I do.
And I embrace it. I accept. Fine, Vikings, you did it. You got me to hope. Congratulations. Here we are again.
Let's go to London and do these poems from London next week.
Okay.
Love Vikings poetry every week, and I was serious. We're doing it from London next week. I'm going to the game, sitting in the stands, but also doing some Star Tribune work while I am there. If you are also going, we want to know about it. Ben Gessling, Chip Scoggins going there on official Star Tribune duty. We're going to try to meet up with a bunch of Vikings fans on Saturday night before the game. If you're going, if you already live in London and you're going and you're a Vikings fan, if you're a Vikings fan traveling for the game, we would love to hear from you and try to get you involved in a Saturday night meetup before that Sunday afternoon game. It's a 2:30 game in London, 8:30 a.m. local time kickoff in Minneapolis. Should be tons of fun, and we would love to see you there. Let us finish with the cooler. All-time MLB hits leader Pete Rose, dead at the age of 83. That confirmed on Monday. Lived most of his remaining years in Nevada. That is where I talked to him. He was there. I was here. He was there on the phone. We were talking about some sort of like fantasy sports startup that he was a part of back in 2016. It was kind of a chance conversation. It was during a time where Ichiro was on the verge of passing Pete Rose for combined hits in Japan and the major leagues. And there was some chatter like, hey, isn't this interesting? What if Ichiro had played all of his career in the United States, in Major League Baseball? Would he be closing in on Pete Rose's record? And he sure could have. He was already up to about 3,000 hits in Major League Baseball, had over 1,200 in Japan. He would have been right there had his career played out a little bit differently. So I engaged Pete Rose in a conversation about that, a whole bunch of what ifs. I also, like, coincidentally, Ichiro is in town with the Marlins to play the Twins around the time I had a chance to talk to Pete Rose. So I engaged both of them on just kind of the conversation topic, the what if subject, and it just turned into a really fun piece. I'm going to link to that today on StarTribune.com if you want to read it. But what I took away from Pete Rose is that a guy who is still fiercely proud of all of his accomplishments, everything he had done, even after the way things ended in Major League Baseball, banned for life for betting on the sport, banned for life, something that certainly hurt him, something he tried to reverse over time, but something that was kind of dogged him throughout the rest of his days. Still a guy who, though, like I said, was fiercely proud of everything he had done, knew his statistics by heart, knew what he had batted in 1984, 1985, things like that towards the end of his career, his exact batting average that allowed him to maybe kind of eclipse Ty Cobb. Just an interesting guy to talk to, somebody who obviously had such an impact on the game. One quote that stood out to me said, he was talking about if anybody would ever break his record, 4,256 hits, he said, I think most of the longevity records are going to stand just because of the way players approach the game today. Several years ago, I remember the New York Post saying Derek Jeter was going to break my record, but he was just too old to get 4,000 more at-bats. That's the amazing thing about Rose. Like, think about all those hits he has. Think about how long you have to play at a high level to get that number of hits. You would have to play more than 20 years and get at least 200 hits a year, average 200 hits a year to get to 4,000 hits. He had 4,256 hits. I don't think that record is ever going to be broken. But then again, like I said to him when we were talking before, we just don't know. We don't know what player is going to come along. What player might start at age 20 and just be so good that they play that long. What nutrition does these days. But it is different now. You don't play every day necessarily. Walks are a bigger part of the game. There's just not as many people getting hits, higher batting averages, things like that. It's a different game today. So I wonder if that record might just be unbreakable or as close to unbreakable as a record can be. Anyway, it was such a great conversation with him. I really enjoyed having the chance to talk to him. That was like 7 or 8 years ago. It was my only encounter really with him, but it was a memorable one. And that story still stands out as one of my favorites to write in my career. That will do it for me today. Great stuff coming up on tomorrow's show. Randy Johnson will join me talking Gophers football. I'm sure we'll get into that controversial ending against Michigan. I'm sure we'll look forward to the USC game this weekend. No doubt about that. So Randy and I should have great stuff to talk about on Wednesday. Chip Scoggins will join me. His Football Across Minnesota feature this week on Randy Shaver and all he is still doing for high school football in Minnesota. Until then, I'm Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Back at it again tomorrow.